All right, hello everybody. I think it's time to get started. So my name's Wes McDermott. I work for Allegoritmic, and I am a substance specialist. And so what we're going to do today is talk about Substance, our tool set, and how it integrates with Unity, and how you can use our tool set to create PBR materials for your different projects. So what we're going to do is talk about kind of like our three kind of main tools for creating these materials. And then, like I said, we're going to look at these inside of Unity as well. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of talk about something that we launched yesterday called Substance Source. And so Substance Source is a complete database full of PBR materials. And if you're familiar with our tools at all, Substance, we used to have a tool called Substance Database, which existed for a long time, all the way up till yesterday. And so Substance Database has now become what we call Substance Source. And so again, like if you've used our tools before, database, it's all of those PBR materials, it's all still there, but we've got Source, which is a whole new set of materials, much higher quality, more content. And so if you're a Substance Live user or a subscriber, you get Source for free. So it's just part of the suite of tools now. And so what I want to do is just kind of show how Substance Source works and how we can easily work with this in Unity. So here, what you would do is you just log in at the Substance Source website. Just log into your Allegorithmic account, and here you can just start to see like all of the materials that we have. These are going to be all substances. There's a mix of fully procedural. There's some scanned data in this, as well as bitmap based. So it's a wide range of materials. And so here you can look at different categories, like for instance, say that I'm looking for some ground textures. I can just go through and start to look at these here. And let's say that I'm just kind of scrolling through, and let's say, oh, this one looks really cool. So I would just click this here. Kind of gives me a preview of what we're looking at. Then I can also click the View in 3D button, which is going to launch this 3D model showing this material using Sketchfab. And so I'm using my phone here for my internet connection. So let's see how quick this is going to work for me. So here we go. Let's just have just kind of a nice kind of 3D preview of what this asset's going to look like in 3D. Again, it's powered by Sketchfab, so you can rotate, scale, move around, and get a close look at how this material is going to work. So let's say that I have this material and I really like it. This is going to be perfect for my project. I can just click download here. Now, I happen to just click this when I'm looking that this is author is based on RDT materials. So this is actually based on scan data, this particular PBR material. So let me just kind of look at more of a practical example for what we're going to kind of show in this presentation today. So let's say, instead I've got some ideas of what I want to look for. So let me go into my search field here. And I'm just going to start to type in, like, let's try wood. And so you can see it's automatically filtering for me. So let's try wood, floor. Oh, OK, here's some cool wood floors here. And again, I like this planks. So let's just select this guy here. Again, we can do a 3D preview of this, and we'll see if we can get this to load fairly quickly. Okay, so again, just kind of a quick idea of what this model is going to look like in 3D. Just gives you a little bit more perspective on what's going to happen. So here I can say, all right, this is great. I want to use this. So again, here I would just click this download button. And you can see here it's just going to pop up, ask me, do I want to save? Just whatever browser. It works in any browser, so it doesn't matter which one you use. But you'll notice here that it's giving me this SBS AR file extension. If you can't see that from the screen, that's what it's saying. So I would just save this, and now I have this material. So to actually use this in Unity, it's really simple. So I'm going to come over here to Unity, and I'm going to look at this project. And so I downloaded this guy, which is one of them's right here. And so all I have to do is just simply drag and drop that SBS AR file material right here into my Unity project to use it. So for instance, if I started like, here's just one material that I had originally. So this was like one material that I had. Here's another one that I just grabbed from Substance Source. Since it's a substance, and substance materials are natively integrated into Unity, so no plugin that you have to worry about. It's just there by default. you can see that here's the material that I just imported into Unity. Again, just simple drag and drop or right-click import into your project. You can see that what it does is it creates a Unity material for you automatically, and it's using the standard shader by default. And then the substance is generating these textures. So for instance, we can look here. These are the textures that it's generating. So I've got my, this is going to be like my albedo, roughness, normal, and so on. And they automatically plug right into the inputs for the standard shader. And then I just apply it. I can just left click and just drag and drop it right here into my scene, and I'm done. So you can see how quick it is to just, browse for a material in source, find something that you like, download it, throw it into your project, you're ready to go. Now, because it's a substance, we also have some capabilities here to actually tweak this on the fly to fine-tune this texture even more. So all of the substance source textures are going to have these basic parameters. So you'll notice the ones that are really good are these min and max roughness values. So here, if I just kind of rotate where I can kind of see where this light is, and hopefully you can kind of see it here in the viewport, but up here, there's some nice kind of subtle grunge map here that's kind of really augmenting that roughness. And maybe I want to try to pull that out a little bit more, so I could come over into here and just start to, in real time, just adjust my roughness value. So I can set a minimum roughness and a maximum roughness value just to kind of really nail that, that texture that I want it to do. I can also do things like maybe increase my AO strength, increase my normal intensity, so maybe it was too small. I can do like a hue shift, just some image editing capabilities. Now, depending on the substance that you've downloaded, it could come with additional parameters as well. So for example, this particular substance I'm using has a parameter called floor grunge. So if I just had this all the way to 0, it basically takes kind of like all the dirt off the floor, and just pulling this value up, it starts to just add a little bit more roughness there to that grunge. Now, of course, again, because this is a substance, I can then come into this guy, and you can see that by default, it was generating these textures here at 512. But since I'm tiling this texture, and again, tiling really simple, I just come right up just as you would any texture inside of Unity. Under the tiling parameter, you can see I set it to 4. So this 4x4 tile at 512 is giving me at, kind of the, probably, the distance where I'm going to view this floor. I think that looks pretty good, so I get a kind of an optimized texture there. But let's say that the camera is going to come in a little closer, so I want to change that resolution. I can do that right here on the fly too. So let's say that at this distance, I want to be able to recompute this substance at 1024. So I just change the resolution, hit apply, and now the substance engine that's part of the plugin that's built into Unity regenerates these textures from scratch. So it's not just a mere upscale like maybe you'd do in Photoshop. It's actually recompute these textures at this new resolution. So you've got yourself a fresh new set of 1024 by 1024 textures, and you can go higher as well. So as you can see, using substance source is a really good tool for being able to quickly just grab all kinds of materials. And like I said, if you're familiar with our tools, and you may be familiar with the database, this is all new. It's similar to the database in that it's a library of PBR materials, but like I said, it's all new high quality content, and with a whole new system for being able to filter, search, and really get a quick look at that type of assets that you want to do before you actually download them into your project. And so, like I said, that was out yesterday, free for everyone that's on Substance Live, so you have it right now. So that's Substance Source. Let's take a look at some other projects, or excuse me, some other tool sets that we have that can really help with your Unity projects. So like I said, I'm just kind of working with this kind of little scene here inside of Unity. And I've got some assets here, like this couch, this table and stuff. And these are kind of like, props, or kind of like sometimes I say one-to-one asset, meaning that, it's going to have a very specific UV layout, and that I need to be able to create textures for it. I'd like to be able to, paint on the model and work with these textures. And we can do that super easily by using Substance Painter. So Substance Painter is another flagship product from Designer. And so here you can see that we have here our substance scene again within Painter. This is the exact same FBX file that I'm using inside of Unity. And so what I can do with Painter now is just, like I said, I can paint directly on the 3D model, and I can work across multiple channels and full PBR material to create these assets. And so what I'd like to do now is just kind of run through some of this here, just so I can show you how you can actually work some of these textures. So let me just kind of turn on some of this, what we kind of had before here. All right, so this is kind of what I had by default originally. And one of the things that I kind of want to showcase right before we kind of dive into how this system works and how I can create this texture is that we also had a new release for Substance Painter, which was last week. And so what you're seeing here is Substance Painter 2.4. And so if you're familiar with the Painter toolset, what we've done in 2.4 is completely reworked the shelf system. Which is great. So it's much, much better. It's a whole new system that allows you to be able to filter and import assets much more efficiently. So just to kind of give you a quick rundown of how that works, here in the shelf, you'll notice that we now have kind of like this browser area. And so when I just kind of click on each one of these kind of these keywords here, these topics, that we have, such as like brushes or particles or tools, materials, and so on, you can see that my content view is here filtering to this specific content. So if you're familiar with Substance Painter previous versions, you'll recall that our shelf, we had these tabs, and the tabs were kind of fixed, and they were filtering specifically. What these categories represent are the actual folders from your shelf that you're working with. And so, for example, let's say that I want to start to look at, or I want to set up my project so that I can filter some specific materials. So what I can do is just come over in here into my editor, and I can start to look at what we refer to as kind of the paths and the keywords to selecting these or creating these creating what this content view is going to filter for me. And so here, since I have materials selected, you can see that I have this little keyword here, which is materials, and this is going to be a usage here. So here, let me just go back to all, and that's going to show everything that's in the shelf. And so here you can see it's just filtering every piece of content that I've imported myself or that Painter ships with. And so here, I can just come over and look at something like, well, under materials, I want to look at ground. And so it filters instantly based on this ground usage and so on. So let's say that I want to look at maybe materials. So now I'm filtering materials. I'm going to hold down the Control key, and I'm also going to look here for where I have maybe some smart materials here. Let's look at this. So here's smart materials. I'm just going to left-click this as well. So now what I'm doing here in my shelf, and this is what we could not do in previous versions of Painter, I'm now starting to set up my own custom filtering. So I'm looking at materials, I'm looking at smart materials, and here is the collection of everything. So now that I kind of have this here, I could just come over here to my shelf, and I could save this as a new shelf preset. So I'll just click this button, and now I have a new preset here, and I'll just call this, let's see here, demo. And so when I click this guy, now I have my specific set of presets that I want to work with. And then I can come in and start to filter this even more. So I could look at maybe, I want to look at steel, dirt, let's see here, steel, and rust. So now out of those two things, I can grab these materials. Now say that I want to kind of work with this. I can just click the button here to break this off into its own shelf. And now I kind of have my tab. And I can dock this anywhere I want here in the UI. And so maybe here with these materials, these are going to be like kind of my two main materials that I'm going to be working with. So I was able to filter that and then create that as its own kind of preset there. So that's kind of how the new shelf works. Another thing just to kind of showcase is the new import system. So here I'm just going to go to File, Import Resources, and here I can just add resources. And let's say I'm just going to go over to my toolbox here where I have some textures just to show you real quick. Let's see, content, textures, grime maps here. So let's say I just select all these guys here, a bunch of grunge maps I want to work with. So now I'm getting ready to import these guys in, and I can actually tag these. So I can just hold down Shift and just select everybody, and I can set a tag that I want these to be a texture type. And so now, when this imports, it's going to place these grunge textures, and it's going to filter them by this keyword here for texture. And since I'm actually going to import this based on maybe this current project, so project living, I can come in here to this prefix path, and I could say that these are going to be grunge textures. So now I'm giving myself kind of more of, if you think about it, it's like a custom keyword that I can use there. So I have the main usage part, which is this is a texture, and I want to be able to also filter this through grunge as I import these guys in. So again, completely new way of working with the shelf that really enhances productivity. So that's kind of like one of the newest features of Substance Painter. So now let's take a look at actually working on a texture and then being able to export this to Unity. So like I was saying before, here I'm just going to look at this sofa cushion. So here in my texture set list, I'm just going to solo this guy. So I'm just looking at this cushion here. And so what I'm doing here with this Unity project, let me just jump back over to Unity real quick, just to give you kind of an overview. So the idea here is that, okay, I'm working on an environment, and typically in a project, you're going to get assets from different ways. And so what we're going to showcase here kind of with the Substance pipeline is I'm going to work on these props like the couch, the table, typewriter and stuff. I'm going to work on those in Substance Painter because they're like props. They have specific kind of a one-to-one UV to textured layout, and I want to be able to work with those inside Substance Painter where I can paint directly on them. Then I'm going to be able to work with other types of materials like, say, this ground here where I have this wood floor. So my wood floor is going to be more like a repeatable environment texture. So I'm going to use either, in my case, Substance Source to do that. So that's where I'm going to get that asset. Then I've got another piece back here, which is this brick wall. And this brick wall, I've actually authored my own Substance material. And I'm going to use Substance Designer to do that. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But the idea is that I'm using different workflows to give me different types of textures. So if I'm working with props, I'm going to use Painter because I can paint directly on the asset and it's very quick. If I want to have a repeatable texture, I'm going to use Substance Designer where I can author my own procedural modular environment texture. So right now we're talking about the prop, so we're going to look at just this couch cushion here, sofa cushion. So let me just turn off these layers here, and let's just say that we're starting with this just from scratch. And so one way is that I can work with Painter pretty quickly. So what I would do for this is I would come in and probably just start with creating a fill layer. And so a fill layer, what that's going to do, it's going to basically create for me a material in a sense that Painter is constantly working across all these multiple channels for a PBR material. So you'll notice I've got color, height, rough, metal, and so on. These are all my channels. So what I'm going to do here is just start to kind of make up a color here for my base color. So I want to come in and just maybe try to make something kind of like a brown like this. And so, okay, that's looking okay for my color. I can start to adjust my roughness here. I'm doing this right now as, like I said, a fill, so I'm working with just these constant values. But this is a really boring PBR texture. There's no detail here. And so we need to go in and start to augment these channels with something. So first thing I'd like to do is get my details. So what I'm going to do is use some height information. So I'm going to click this height button here. And I get what we call the kind of the mini shelf here. So I can do, it's filtering by procedural, texture, and let's do a grunge. Well, here, I'll tell you what, it's a little easier to see it over here. So let me come over here to just my procedurals. And here in my search, I'm just going to do, let's see, let me do a search for leather. Okay, so here's some leather textures that I have. And so I'm going to use this grunge leather as a height map. So I can just left click, drag and drop, and place this right here on the height channel. And so when I do that, you can see that I'm getting some pretty intense height information. And that's not really what I'm looking for. So like I said, this fill layer, you can think of it as a container for this channel information. So right now, this layer contains information for color, height, rough, and metal. So what I can do is come in and tell this layer to target a specific channel. So let's do that. Let's come over to this top and say, hey, layer, I just want to look at or manipulate the height information right now. And so now I'm looking at just the height channel information. Notice that my blending mode changed, and now I have my opacity. Here I'm just going to simply just drop my opacity down quite a bit. So I get something like this. So now I'm getting kind of that height value range that I really want to work with here. And I'll kind of zoom in close and just kind of move this light so you guys can see now. I'm thinking about kind of like my surface attribute and how light is going to basically be disrupted by this kind of micro surface that I'm creating here. So I have this, that's working pretty good. I've got some surface here, but you know what? I'd kind of like to tile this a bit. Well, since this is a procedural, I can just come over here to this UV scale and I'll just tile this. So now I'm getting a bit more intricate, kind of sharper detail to that, which is more of what I'm looking for. So that takes care of kind of my base color and my height. So what I'd like to do now is work on my roughness. And when you're creating PBR materials, your roughness map is king. It is really one of the most important maps you can do. It's your most creative map. And anytime you're trying to create any type of surface that really mimics something from the real world, your roughness map is really what's going to make your textures stand out. So again, what we're going to do here is just come in and just use one of these textures here. So let me come in and just grab like a grunge. So, and then I'll do a search for dirt. Well, here, let's do it like this. Let's see what we have. Okay, so this grunge rough dirty, I'm going to use this one. So just left click, drag and drop, and I'm going to place it right here on my roughness channel. And so right now you can see that it's already starting to break up the roughness, and this is really starting to help me create more of a realistic asset. But I'll say that the value ranges kind of on that is not really what I want to do. So it's a little too intense. So again, what I'm going to do for this guy is I'm just going to quickly come over to my effects, and I'm going to grab a levels tool here. And again, because this fill layer is a container for all my channel information, I can tell this levels to affect just the roughness information. And then what I can do is just take my output black and white and just kind of remap this value. And this is kind of the way I always do my roughness. So it's just subtle, but it's just enough to really kind of change how that highlight is working on that. So now I've got this leather material here that I'm using for this sofa cushion. So real quick, I think what I'll do is just right-click this guy, duplicate it. So put it right over top, and then I'm going to come over to my color and just adjust my value a bit. So kind of just brighten that. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use this to create a little bit of kind of grunge and wear on this sofa. So now that I have kind of this lighter version of this, I'm just going to right-click. I'm going to add a mask to it. So now I have this mask, and now I'm going to use what we refer to as a procedural generator here. So I'll just come over and add a generator. And then here, I'm just going to grab just one of these generator tools. In this case, I'm just going to use my mask builder. And so here, I'm just kind of just making some quick adjustments. Let's come in here to my curvature. And so what I'm doing here, and if you want to see, I'm actually generating a mask. So if I just hold down the Alt key and just left click, you can see this is the mask that's being generated for me by this generator. So now I'll just hit M to go back to my full material. And what I'm doing here is just making just a little bit of, just a little bit of kind of wear to this. And again, this is being done on that layer that's above that's just giving me, just kind of lighten that color value. So just, again, just a little bit of change to the overall value of that leather color. One other thing, we'll go back into this mask guy. There's a little tool in here for scratches. So I'm just going to turn in the scratches here. Let's see. Let's see, that's giving me a little bit of trouble for now. Let's make a change here. Okay, all right, I'll tell you what, instead of doing it that way real quick, let's do it a different way. So let's say that, okay, instead of trying to do it procedurally like that, it was giving me a little bit of a trouble. So here what I'm going to do is just come in and just add a paint layer on top of this. And then I'm going to come over here to, let's see, my alphas. Let's do a quick search for scratch. See if we have any scratch alphas, and we do. So I'm going to use this guy as my brush. And now I can come in, again, since this is a 3D painting program, I can come in and just start to just scratch in some of these areas just manually like this, right over top of what I want to do. So we're doing a mix of being able to work kind of procedurally, also being able to paint directly on the mesh, and we're generating this texture, pretty quickly. And again, since this is all based on substance technology, we can go in and just change the sizing of this at any time that we want. So once I have this texture done, I can just simply just right-click, and I can come in and do Export Textures. And then I can choose, which material I want to be exporting. So in our case, we were just kind of working on the sofa, so we would just choose that. But here underneath our configuration, you can see that we actually have setups or export presets for Unity. And so if we take a look at this Unity 5, you can see this is going to be the standard shader, kind of using the metallic workflow. And so what this is doing here is it's going to be exporting out albedo transparency, metallic smoothness, normal, and emission. Well, we don't have an emission channel, so we're not really worrying about that. But what's interesting about this is that you can go into Substance Painter here, and you can set up your own configurations and pack your channels in any way that you want. So you'll notice here that for our metallic smoothness, it's an RGBA image. So the metallic here is in the RGB channel, and then for the alpha, we're taking that roughness, and basically it's being converted to what Unity refers to as smoothness, and that's placed in the alpha. So what that means is that we would just export that texture, and what that means is when we jump back over here to Unity, let me grab Unity. When you just import in that texture, all you have to do is just come up over here to your standard shader, and you just drag that metallic map in, and it's going to put the smoothness in the alpha channel. It's going to be all set for you. So you can texture, you just export, you have the preset that you need specifically for your Unity project, and then you just apply the maps here to the input channels. Now, one last piece here that we have for our setup is our Substance Designer. So right now we've talked about being able to get materials from a library, our substance source. We've also talked about being able to paint directly on assets using Substance Painter. And now we can talk about, well, what if I want to author my own procedural modular materials? I can do that using Substance Designer. So here's a material that I created. So I could just take this. I'm going to place this right here on the background wall here. So this is just a brick material. And let's take a look at what that is here in Substance Designer. So here in Designer, you can see that I'm using this node-based interface to create a procedural material. And it's actually quite simple to kind of run through, because all you're doing is starting with just simple shapes, and you're combining them in different ways to make a more complex shape. So for instance, here I have just a simple pattern that I made, which looks something like this. And if I want to turn this into a brick pattern, all I have to do is just utilize what we call a tile random node. And it takes whatever shape that we have, and it just generates kind of a pattern like this. In my case, I've set these parameters to look like a brick wall. And I've got a lot of control where I can do things like slightly offset and rotate them and so on to really get kind of a realistic look to that. And you can then just use different things like procedural noises, similar to kind of what we kind of showcased there inside of Substance Painter, to do things like different like warps. So for instance, here's a noise, and I'm just simply kind of warping my brick. Here's where I'm using a very cool node that we call slope blur, which is going to help me create these cracks. So here you can see that I just use that simple node with, that's driven by a procedural noise that looks like this. And I'm able to create kind of like these chipped, cracked edges here for my brick. And so the idea is that you just kind of build this up little by little, and then you can just create yourself a full procedural material that can then be imported into Unity. So you can see here that I've got several nodes, so it being node-based, it can look kind of complex to build this up. But the types of nodes that you're using in Designer are actually more artist-oriented. So for example, if I hit this space bar, you can see that we're using things like a blend, blur, hue saturation, levels, warps, emboss, things like that. So it's not something that you're doing like authoring a shader. What you're doing is you're just authoring textures. So once I kind of have this done, all I have to do is just come over to my Substance, and I just click this Publish button. And again, it's going to save it here as this SBS AR file. So this is going to be like my Substance material. So I'm going to save this, and then, like I said, all I have to do is just drag and drop that into Unity. It's going to generate the material. So here's that material that I created. And then I can just apply it by just simply, well, here, let's put it on this whole back wall here. I can just apply it by just dragging and dropping it onto an asset, just like you would any type of material inside of Unity. Again, because this is a texture, I could author, as it's a substance, I could author all kinds of different parameters. Like say I want to change the color of the bricks. Say I want to change the roughness or add dirt or any number of type of procedural effects. I could do that and have the ability to work and change those directly here in Unity. That means I'm not constantly jumping back and forth between programs. And I have the ability to create a material such as this brick that can be used not only in this project, but any project that I work on. Because maybe in this case, I want it to be kind of like a dringy, kind of rough, grungy brick, but I may give myself some parameters to, take the dirt off or smooth out some of that roughness so it's more like looks like a new brick. And then in another project, I use that same material, drag and drop, and I can make a few changes. Another thing that I can do, since this is procedural, I can just hit this random seed button, and it just randomly regenerates the texture to look completely different. So let's say that I have this brick wall on this part of a room, and I want to use the brick wall on another part of the room. I use the material, then I can just randomize it on this wall. So now instead of using that same texture, it's a different set of textures just kind of randomized. Again, based off that one asset. So that's going to kind of do it for me on my time here, running out of time. So what I want to do, again, is just thank everybody for coming to the session. We have our booth down in kind of the exhibitor's end. So if you guys have questions, want to see some real-time demo, please come by. I'd love to just chat with you one-on-one. Thanks a lot to everybody. I hope you're enjoying Unite, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.